It all started on a quiet, dreary Tuesday night, the kind of evening where the air seems thick with unease, like something's just waiting to happen. My name's Jake Miller, and this was the night I moved into what would soon become my worst nightmare. I had just gotten a new job in the city, and in my excitement, I rented an apartment in an old building, one that hadn't seen much care or attention in years. The place was cheap, a little too cheap, but the listing made it sound perfect. High ceilings, hardwood floors, a large living space, and best of all, it was in a prime location. It was the kind of deal that seemed too good to be true, and looking back, I should have known better. The first few hours were normal. I unloaded my things, unpacked my boxes, and got to work setting up. The apartment was oddly quiet, too quiet. I didn't think much of it at first. The building creaked like an old house should, and I told myself that any unsettling noise was just part of the charm. After all, there was no reason to be paranoid. But then, as night fell, I started hearing things. It began with the floorboards above me, groaning as if something or someone was walking around. The sounds were subtle at first, just a faint creaking that could be easily dismissed. But as the hours passed, the noises became louder, more deliberate, like footsteps pacing around above me. I tried to shake it off. Maybe it was just the old building settling. But the sounds continued, and then came the whispering. I froze in place, a chill running down my spine. The whisper wasn't just a faint murmur. It was clear, too clear. It was as if someone was standing right next to me, breathing heavily, speaking in hushed tones. "Jake, Jake, you shouldn't be here." I quickly turned around, but the room was empty. No one. I was alone. My heart started pounding in my chest as I strained my ears, waiting for more. And then, it came again, this time closer, closer than before. "Leave, before it's too late." It was only then that I realized I wasn't just hearing things. Someone or something was in this apartment with me. I rushed over to the door, slamming it shut behind me as I stepped into the hallway. My heart was racing, my breath shallow. I couldn't tell if the building was playing tricks on me, or if there was something more sinister going on. But I wasn't about to just run. Something told me that whatever was happening in this apartment wasn't just a coincidence. It was something darker, something that had been here long before I had. And I wasn't about to leave just yet. I didn't know what to think. I stood in the hallway for what felt like an eternity, listening to the silence of the building. The whispering had stopped, but the feeling of dread had settled in, like an uninvited guest pressing its weight on my chest. The flickering lights overhead only made the air feel thicker, colder, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I forced myself to move. My legs felt stiff, but I made my way back to my apartment, the door creaking as I opened it. The shadows seemed longer inside, stretching across the room like fingers reaching toward me. The apartment, once so quiet and inviting, now felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for me to make my next move. I decided to check the apartment. Every single room, even the closets. Maybe I could find an explanation for the strange sounds, or even something that would help me make sense of the situation. I started with the bedroom, the air heavy with tension. There was nothing in there, just my bed, my bags, and the usual furnishings. Then I went into the kitchen. The sink was full of dirty dishes, but the most unsettling thing was the fridge. The door was slightly ajar, just a crack, like someone had opened it and then forgotten to close it completely. I pushed it shut and froze. Something was off about the smell. It wasn't the normal mustiness of an old fridge. It was something foul, something that didn't belong in a kitchen. I hesitated, but curiosity got the better of me. I opened the fridge again. The contents looked normal at first glance, but the smell was growing stronger. My stomach churned as I pushed aside a few containers. What I found made my blood run cold. At the very back, buried behind a few boxes of takeout and some forgotten jars, was something I couldn't explain. A piece of paper, old and yellowed with age, was taped to the back wall of the fridge. The words were scrawled hastily in a frantic hand. My fingers trembled as I peeled it off the wall, unrolling it carefully. It read, "Don't trust the walls." My heart stopped. What did that even mean? Who wrote this? And why would someone put it in a fridge of all places? I slammed the fridge shut, my breath coming fast. There had to be a logical explanation for this. Someone must have lived here before me and left that message, right? But as I glanced around the apartment again, the sinking feeling in my stomach told me otherwise. This was no ordinary apartment. I felt like I was being watched. Every sound in the building seemed amplified. Every creak, every rustle. Like the walls themselves were alive, and they were waiting for me to make a mistake. I decided to do what any rational person would do in a situation like this. I started searching for answers. I needed to know who had lived here before me. I needed to know why this place felt so wrong. I went back to the front door and, just as I was about to turn the handle, I heard it again. The whisper. This time, though, it was clearer, almost as if the voice was directly behind me. Get out. I spun around, but there was nothing. Just the dim light and the empty space around me. My breath came in sharp gasps as panic began to claw its way up my throat. I had to find out what was happening here, and I wasn't going to be scared away by shadows. But little did I know, the walls were about to reveal their darkest secret. I couldn't leave. Something deep inside me told me that I was closer to the truth than I had ever been. As much as the apartment scared me, I felt this strange pull, like the building was drawing me in, whispering its secrets. Secrets I was meant to uncover. I had to dig deeper, no matter how terrifying it seemed. I began searching the apartment more methodically. My first instinct was to check the walls. The whispering had come from somewhere, and I was convinced the walls held the answers. I tapped on the drywall, listening for hollow spots, anything that could hint at something hidden. After what felt like hours of tapping, I finally found it. A small section of the wall near the bedroom that sounded different from the rest. I ran my fingers along the seams and, with a sudden rush of adrenaline, I pried at the corner. The wall gave way more easily than I expected, revealing a hidden compartment. My heart raced as I pulled the loose panel away, the dust clouding the air. Inside, there was a small metal box. It was old, rusted, and clearly hadn't been touched in years. My hands shook as I opened it. What I found inside sent a chill so deep through my bones I could barely breathe. There were old, faded photographs. But these weren't just family photos. They were pictures of the apartment building, taken from strange angles from within the walls, as though someone had been watching the tenants long before I moved in. And then there was a notebook. The pages were yellowed, the ink faded, but the handwriting was unmistakable, similar to the scrawl on the note in the fridge. I opened the notebook slowly, each page revealing more disturbing entries. The writer's madness was evident in every word. The walls are watching. They don't like when people stay too long. They took him. I heard his screams through the wall. They won't stop until they have more. I couldn't stop reading. It was like the notebook was speaking directly to me, warning me. The more I read, the more I felt the building close in on me. I could hear the whispers again, louder now, echoing from all corners of the apartment, like the walls themselves were alive, suffocating me. They are always here, always waiting. I slammed the notebook shut, panic rising in my chest. I didn't want to believe it, but what if it was true? What if this apartment wasn't just old? It was cursed. What if the whispers, the footsteps, the strange messages, they weren't just coincidences? In a frenzy, I scoured the notebook for a clue. Any clue that might explain how to escape this place, how to stop whatever force was haunting me. Then I found it buried in the last few pages. Do not sleep here. The walls come alive at night. I looked around, heart pounding. The room felt suffocating, the walls closing in on me as if they were trying to trap me inside. I couldn't stay here. I had to leave. But as I stood up to run, I froze. There was a sound, a scraping noise, coming from behind the wall. The same place I had just opened. It wasn't just a sound. It was a feeling. The kind of feeling that makes your skin crawl, like something was moving in there. Something alive, watching me. I stepped back slowly, my breath shallow. And then, suddenly, the whispering returned. This time louder, more desperate. Get out, before it's too late. But it wasn't just a whisper anymore. The walls began to creak and groan, as though something immense was pushing against them from within. My blood ran cold. There was something in the walls, something that had been waiting for me, and I knew in that moment that if I stayed, I wouldn't make it out. I didn't waste another second. I ran for the door, but it wouldn't budge. Panic surged through me as I yanked at the handle, twisting it with all my strength, but the door was locked from the inside. I hadn't locked it. Something had locked it. I turned around, my heart hammering in my chest, my breath ragged. The room seemed to be growing darker, like the very walls were swallowing the light. The whispering had turned into a low hum, vibrating the air around me. I could feel it now, like the apartment was alive, breathing, watching me. I backed away, my eyes darting from corner to corner. And then I saw it, a shadow in the far corner of the room. At first, I thought it was my mind playing tricks on me, but then it moved, slowly, like a figure creeping out from the darkness, coming closer. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I was paralyzed, rooted to the spot. The figure was tall, unnaturally tall, and its face was obscured by a hood or something dark that hung low over it. Its movements were jerky, unnatural, as though it were dragging itself across the floor. I turned to the window, desperate for an escape, but it was sealed shut. The glass was fogged, as if something was pressing against it from the outside. My reflection was distorted in the glass, but behind me, I could see the figure, closer now, its presence filling the room with an overwhelming sense of dread. Who are you?" I whispered, my voice barely a breath, as if speaking might provoke whatever it was. There was no response. Instead, the figure began to move again, a deep, guttural sound emanating from its throat, like a slow, drawn-out hiss. And then I heard it, faint but unmistakable. Jake, you shouldn't have stayed." I turned, desperate to find a way out, but the figure was standing right behind me now. I could feel its cold breath on the back of my neck, like ice against my skin. My vision blurred, and for a moment I thought I might collapse. The air felt thick, suffocating. Suddenly, the lights flickered and went out, plunging the apartment into total darkness. I froze, my body rigid with terror. Couldn't see, but I could hear it. The figure was moving, its ragged breathing filling the void. I reached out blindly, desperate to find anything that might help me. My hands brushed against the wall, and I felt something strange. A rough patch, like something had been scratched into the surface. I pressed against it, hoping to find some kind of escape. The wall felt solid at first, but then it gave way, sliding open with a soft groan. A hidden doorway. I didn't think. I just ran. I stumbled into the small space behind the wall, the opening barely big enough to fit my body. I could still hear the figure, its breath close behind me, the scraping of its movements on the floor like claws against wood. I shoved myself into the narrow passage, praying that the wall would close behind me, but it didn't. I felt it, a cold hand on my shoulder. Its fingers were bony, almost skeletal, sending shockwaves of ice through my body. "You shouldn't have come. You want leave." I spun around, ready to fight, but there was nothing there. The passage was empty. I didn't stop running. The hallway twisted and turned, leading me deeper into the heart of the building. I didn't know where I was anymore. All I could do was follow the darkened corridor, my pulse racing, my mind screaming for escape. And then I saw it. A door. At the end of the hallway. It was ajar, and a dim light seeped through the crack, beckoning me. I sprinted toward it, barely daring to hope that it might lead to freedom. But as I pushed the door open, my heart sank. The room was empty, but on the walls, there was something new, fresh, deep scratches, as if something or someone had been trying to claw its way out. The whispering was louder now, so loud it felt like it was coming from inside my head. "You can't escape." I stumbled back, my eyes wide with horror. The room wasn't empty. It was a trap I had walked straight into. And then, before I could move, the door slammed shut behind me, locking me inside. The room was suffocating. The air was thick with a damp, musky smell that seemed to cling to everything around me. I was completely disoriented, my heartbeat echoing in my ears as I turned in frantic circles, trying to make sense of my surroundings. The walls were close, so close, pressing in as if the building itself wanted to crush me. There was no way out. The door had slammed shut, and when I tried to turn the handle, it wouldn't budge. No matter how hard I pushed, pulled, or pounded on it, it remained locked, sealed as though I was never meant to leave. The whispering had stopped, replaced by an oppressive silence that filled the room like a thick fog. But then, from the corner of the room, a noise broke through. The scraping sound of something dragging across the floor. It was slow, deliberate, almost as if it were savoring my fear. I turned toward the noise, dread creeping up my spine like ice. The light in the room was dim, casting long, twisted shadows along the walls. And then I saw it. The shadow was moving. It wasn't the figure from earlier, but something else. Something that was now crawling along the floor, dragging its body behind it like a broken doll. It was humanoid, but not human. Its limbs were too long, too thin, twisted at unnatural angles, like it had been bent and reshaped by something sinister. Its face, I couldn't look at it for long. There was something wrong with its eyes. They were wide, black pits that seemed to swallow the light. I wanted to scream, to run, but my legs felt like stone, rooted to the ground. The figure's movements were jerky, erratic, like it was fighting against its own body to reach me. It dragged itself closer, inch by inch, its eyes never leaving mine. The air grew colder with every passing second, and I could hear its ragged breathing soft, like it was inhaling my fear. "Jake," I could barely hear the whisper. It was barely audible over the sound of my own frantic breathing. But it was there, and it was calling my name. The voice was the same as before, the same voice that had haunted me from the moment I stepped into this apartment. It was the voice of the building itself. "Jake, you're mine now." The creature stopped a few feet in front of me, its limbs contorting as it slowly stood, its movements unnatural, like it was struggling to take on a human form. It tilted its head as if studying me, and then, in an instant, it lunged forward, its long fingers outstretched, grasping for my throat. I barely managed to dodge its grasp, my body instinctively twisting away from its skeletal hand. It hissed in frustration, but it didn't back off. Came for me again, faster this time. I scrambled backward, my body crashing into something hard. I turned around, only to realize I had backed into a wall that hadn't been there before. The wall was covered in scratches, deep, jagged marks that seemed to pulse with a dark energy, like they were alive. I slammed my fist against the wall, desperate to break through, but there was nothing. The creature was closing in again, its ghastly face twisted into a grotesque grin. And then, in that moment of sheer terror, I heard it. A sound that didn't come from the creature, but from the walls themselves. A whisper, a voice so deep and guttural it vibrated through my bones. "You shouldn't have come. You should have left when you had the chance." The walls began to shift. Slowly, imperceptibly, they closed in on me, moving like living flesh. I could feel the pressure building around me, squeezing the air out of my lungs. Couldn't breathe. The walls were pressing in from all sides. "No, let me out," I screamed, my voice desperate, but the walls didn't care. They kept coming. I glanced over at the creature, which was now standing just inches away from me, its hand outstretched once more. But this time something was different. The creature's eyes were wide with fear. It was shaking. Its twisted form started to tremble, as if the apartment itself was rejecting it. You're not supposed to be here," it whispered, its voice cracking as it stumbled backward. Before I could process what was happening, the creature disintegrated, collapsing into a pile of dust and ash right before my eyes. The walls, which had been closing in on me, stopped. The pressure eased. I was alone again. The room was silent once more, but now there was a different kind of stillness. The kind that tells you something terrible has passed. Something that shouldn't have been. But I wasn't safe. Not yet. I could still feel the weight of the apartment's presence, like a dark cloud hanging above me. And then, just as I thought the worst had passed, I heard the whisper again. came from the walls, from everywhere, vibrating in my very bones. You're still here, and now you'll never leave. The apartment was not done with me. The air in the room had turned oppressive once more, thick with something unseen but undeniably there, an energy that weighed heavily on me. I was alive, but barely. I had escaped the creature, but I could still feel its presence lingering, something dark and ancient, crawling beneath the surface of the walls. I wasn't free. The apartment still had its grip on me. I stumbled toward the corner of the room, my hands shaking as I tried to steady myself. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what had just happened. What was that thing? What was this place? Why had I moved into an apartment that seemed to be alive? The answers eluded me, but the truth was painfully clear. I wasn't going to make it out of here unscathed. No one did. I could hear the whispers again. They were low, almost imperceptible, but they were there, curling around the edges of my thoughts, like fingers tapping at the back of my mind. You can never escape. I pressed my hands to my ears, but it didn't help. The voice was inside me now, and the walls, those cursed walls, seemed to pulse with a life of their own. I turned back to the door, still locked. There was no use trying to open it again. It wouldn't work. This place had a way of keeping you in. It wanted me here. There was something far worse lurking beyond those walls. It wasn't the creature, it wasn't even the whispers. It was something else. Something that the apartment was feeding off of. Something that had been in this building for decades. I had to get out. But how? Then, I remembered the hidden passage. The secret wall I had found earlier, the one I had crawled into in my panic. Maybe there was more to this apartment than I realized. Maybe that was the key. I took a deep breath, steadying myself as I pushed through the darkness. The hallway stretched before me, twisting like a labyrinth, every turn leading me deeper into the unknown. The walls pressed closer again, suffocating me, but I ignored the fear gnawing at my insides. Couldn't let it stop me. As I moved down the hallway, the air grew colder, the whispers louder. There was something watching me, something following me. I could feel it on the back of my neck, a presence so close I could almost touch it, but I couldn't turn around. I couldn't let myself show weakness. Finally, I reached the hidden room again. The wall slid open with a quiet creak, revealing the narrow passage beyond. My hands were slick with sweat, but I couldn't stop now. I crawled into the dark tunnel, the walls closing in around me. I heard the scraping sound again, but it was distant now, like the apartment was trying to keep me in the dark, to keep me away from whatever truths lay hidden beyond the walls. I kept moving, but the tunnel seemed endless, winding in ways that defied logic. There were no windows, no light, just the creeping shadows and the whispers. Always there, always waiting. I started to lose track of time. Was it minutes? Hours? Days? I didn't know anymore. And then I saw it. A light in the distance. It was faint at first, but it grew brighter as I drew closer, until I could see the source. A door. The only door in this endless maze. My heart surged with hope. This was it. This had to be the way out. I reached for the door, but as soon as my hand touched the handle, I froze. The whispering stopped. Everything went still. I felt it before I saw it. Presence. Behind me, so close I could almost feel its breath. The air was thick, and the walls seemed to be pulsing in time with my heartbeat. Leave. You are not meant to escape. The voice was so powerful, so full of malice, it almost broke me. But I forced myself to turn, and there it was, a figure standing in the shadows just beyond the edge of the light. It was tall, impossibly tall, and its face was obscured by a dark veil. It was the same shape I had seen before, only now it was more than just a shadow. It was solid, real, and it was coming toward me. You shouldn't have come. The words echoed in my mind, filling me with a paralyzing fear. But I couldn't stop, couldn't give up. I reached for the door handle again, my fingers shaking, and yanked the door open. It didn't lead to the outside. It led deeper into the bowels of the apartment. The room was different this time. There were no windows, no furniture, just cold, barren walls that seemed to stretch endlessly. The air was thick with decay, and on the walls, carved into the very plaster, were words. "This is your fate. No one leaves." The door slammed shut behind me with a deafening crash. I turned to face the figure. It was right behind me now. No more shadows. No more distance. I could feel its presence in every inch of the room. "You are part of it now. Part of the apartment. Forever." I didn't scream. I didn't fight. I just stood there, staring into the darkness, knowing in my heart that I was never getting out. And then, the walls closed in, and the last thing I heard was the sound of my own breath, swallowed by the apartment. The apartment that would never let me go. And it never will. There's no escaping it. Not really. I wish I could tell you I found a way out. That somehow, after everything, I made it back into the light and escaped that place. But I didn't. No one does. I was a fool to think that there could be a happy ending. The apartment isn't just a building. It's a living thing. It breathes, it watches, it waits. And once it claims you, once you step through its door, it doesn't let go. I've learned that now. The walls, they never stop moving. They never stop shifting. Every creak, every groan, every whisper, they're all part of it. The apartment knows when you're afraid. It knows when you're trying to escape. And it feeds on that fear, pulling you deeper into its grasp. I tried to fight. I tried to run. But every time I thought I'd found a way out, the building changed. The walls shifted. The halls twisted. What was once the path forward now led me in circles. It was as if the apartment was toying with me, enjoying my desperation, savoring my fear. There were moments when I thought I could see the truth, when the veil lifted just enough to show me the horror that awaited, but it was always just out of reach. Now, I know it's not about leaving. It's about becoming part of the building. It's about surrendering to it. And that's the hardest part. The apartment doesn't kill you. No, it doesn't need to. It turns you into something else. Something that belongs to the walls. Something that will whisper in the dark. Like the voices before you. Like the whispers that have claimed so many others before me. I'm one of them now. And I can feel it. I can feel it in my skin, in my bones. The pull of the walls around me. Tugging me in, melding me with the darkness. The whispering. It's in my head. Louder now. A chorus of voices from the apartment's victims. Victims just like me. They all spoke. All whispered their warnings, just like I'm doing now. And yet, I know I'm just another echo. The apartment will claim more, and the stories will continue. Someone else will come looking for an apartment. Someone else will ignore the warnings, just as I did. The cycle will continue. It always does. As I stand here, feeling the walls closing in around me, I realize the terrifying truth. This isn't just my story. There's two. And now it's mine. The apartment. It owns us all.